Hello, my name is Jos Meyer, and welcome to the first episode of the Flow Center interviews. At the Flow Center, we're all about exploring, analysing, and breaking down that elusive state of mind called flow. If you've never heard of flow before, you're in for a treat today because we've got a special person here who's got a wealth of experience and is engaged with a lot of people from all around the world who've accessed flow on a daily basis. My guest today is Andrew McBride. He's a teacher, coach, and mental performance mentor. Worked with many international and professional athletes, coaches and sports teams around the themes of mental skills enhancement and developing high-performance cultures and environments. He's worked with athletes through the New Zealand Football Association in the high-performance department, with the under-17 Women's Football World Cup squad, football team who will host the FIFA Under-20s tournament in 2015. He's also founded a company called Brain Builder, which is a company about one-on-one high-performance support and strategy building, improved learning, developing strong mental strategies that persist under pressure, and understand the emotional triggers that impact the performance. So welcome, Andrew. Welcome to the Flow Center interviews.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Great.
Yeah, I'm sure that introduction's hardly done justice to the amount of experience that you've got in the field of peak performance. So with such a diverse background in the area of peak performance, for me personally, it's an area I've been fascinated with for a long time, and I'm pretty excited to explore a couple of concepts behind what peak performance actually is and how it relates to flow and how you've experienced this in your own life.
Yep.
So how does what you teach about peak performance relate to flow?
I think, when you're looking at peak performance, I think you need everything to align together. You need the physical competency, the mental competency, a little bit of luck here and there. If you can get a bit of luck, it's always very helpful. But yeah, I think with regard to peak performance, I think everything's got to align. And you need those good mentors. You need to have a reflective mindset that you're going to take the learning out of everything that happens, good or bad. And I think all of that breeds the ability to find some flow in your, whether it be day-to-day performance, everyday life, or international stage, or Olympic gold medal winning philosophy. I think you've got to give yourself the best possible chance to find some flow. And basically, that's what peak performance aims to do. You work at those marginal 1%, 2% gains. And hopefully on the night or on the day or when the whistle blows or wherever it may be, you give yourself the best possible chance to be in that flow state of mind. And hopefully by working on those marginal gains, like I say, you've got more chance, more opportunity to be in that flow state when you need to be.
That's really interesting because you talk about everything coming into alignment as sort of a chance. Now, how much of this can you leave to chance, and what are the sort of chances of athletes getting into flow? Is that the difference between a top athlete and a regular athlete, the amount of times they get into these peak performance states and flow states?
No, I don't think it's about chance at all. I think when I'm talking about everything falling into alignment, it's making sure that you've done the preparation to get everything to align at the time that you do it. So everything that you do, your nutrition, your psych work, your mental performance work, your physical, your training, your strength and conditioning, you've got to put yourself in the best possible position so that everything aligns, not by chance. Because too often I think, everything that kind of, it'll be all right on the night philosophy, or things will just click into place when you need to be. Yeah, you can take that route if you want. But I think when it comes down to it, I think the better prepared athletes who are prepared in all different areas and all different aspects, they're the ones who find themselves in flow more frequently, more often, and at a higher level than those that say, leave it to chance or maybe put 75% of the work in. But essentially, it's about practice. Practice what you preach. If you want to find flow in your performance, then practice it in training. How often do you take care of the mental aspect of your performance in training? So you need to be practicing, working under pressure, practicing your mindset, working on your distraction cues, all of those kind of things you need to do in your training, because a lot of athletes are happy to get in the gym and work on their strength and conditioning and get on the practice field and work on their skills. But flow is a skill itself, and you need to practice it in training. If you're going to be this holistic athlete that lives above the line, what Brain Builder calls living above the line every day, day in, day out, you need to practice everything. And that includes practicing, your mentality and all of the cues that you use, and how to work under pressure and concentration and all of those things that, in my opinion, too many people leave. Either put it in the too hard basket or leave it till the night, because you can't replicate the pressure. You can't imagine what it's like to be in a stadium of 40,000. You can't do this, you can't do that. But by leaving it to chance, there's a chance it'll fail.
So you'd say practicing these techniques, practicing that moment is as important in your training as, say, strength and conditioning?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you know that you're going into a sport or an environment where you're going to have to concentrate on multiple cues, multiple decision making, performing under pressure, then you have to have a training program that replicates everything that's going to happen when it comes to game day. Because if you don't, then you're leaving yourself exposed to the athlete or to the team that has covered as many of those bases as possible. Clearly, on the night or on the day, things are different, and maybe you can never 100% replicate that environment that you're performing in on the night, because there's so many variables. But I would almost guarantee that the athlete that covers as many of them as possible is better prepared and is able to perform above the line, live above the line, because it's part of a mindset. You can't be wanting to experience flow on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, but not be willing to work on it from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's not a magic switch that can be flicked on and off. It might feel like that when it clicks into place, but when it does click into place, it's normally because you feel like you've been there before. You've practiced it so much before. You've mentally rehearsed things so much before. So in everything we do, preparation is key, and leaving no stone unturned. If you want to be the best in the world at something, you've got to guarantee that you're doing everything you can to be the best that you can be. And if you come up a little bit short, then but you know that you've left no stone unturned, and then maybe on the day that guy was just better than you, or that team had the rub of the green, but you've got to give yourself the best possible chance, because to be the best in the world at anything is exceptionally difficult. That's why it is the best in the world. But give yourself a fighting chance is what we say, and how we do it is through working on your mental capacity.
So talk us through some of those strategies that you talk about, or how does this actually look when you've got an athlete that you're working with, one-on-one or with a group? How does it actually look? What are you doing with them actually to prepare them for, putting them in front of an audience of 50, 100,000 people?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, we'd always sit down with the athlete on the team and actually work out what they wanted to achieve, and work out how they wanted to achieve it. So a lot of this comes from asking the right questions. And then as we mine a little bit deeper and dig a little bit deeper into their psyche or into their mentality, then we can uncover the things that they need to work on. So, for example, if you work with a cricketer who's struggling with their concentration, then a lot of work that we do with our top class cricketers, we really hone in onto the things that they desperately need to concentrate on. So the ball, the bowler, etc. If we find that they're being distracted by too many other cues, then we work on some, distraction work, reducing distraction, and we'll put some things in place whereby they can switch on and switch off their concentration. Because if you're standing at a crease for 5 hours, the brain hasn't got 5 hours worth of consistent concentration. So we work on how to stop thoughts, how to switch off. A lot of our batsmen that we work with, they'll switch off. They'll just have a look around the crowd. They'll pick a few things out for a couple of seconds. They'll work on their breathing, and then they're back into their mental rehearsal. So, that's an example of if you were trying to concentrate on something.
How about something like like pressure, so performing under pressure, how do you,
Yeah.
what kind of things do you do to replicate that high pressure environment when you're on game day and you've got all these people watching you and you need to perform? How do you prepare someone for that?
I think the first step is that you actually discuss and deconstruct what pressure actually is. Because pressure comes in so many different ways. You know, you've got your physiological pressure, you've got your mental pressure. When you can pinpoint your own pressure points, then you can go somewhere to fixing what that pressure actually is. Too many times an athlete will say, I just feel under pressure. Well, we need to actually dig deep and find out, do you feel, is it pressure from being watched by a large audience? Is it pressure from yourself? Is it pressure from the coach? So the first thing we always do is deconstruct pressure, because pressure is a concept. And what's a pressurized situation to you, it might not be pressure to me. So there's no global view of pressure, and there's no real right or wrong answer. What we do is we dig deep to find out what the pressure is for the individual. And then with and alongside and in front and behind and over the top and underneath of the athlete, because we wrap all around them, we will find out how you can best reduce that pressure. So it could be that, an athlete might, in the tunnel, going out to a football match, football teams you work with, they might just have a few phrases that we know puts them in more chance of being in a flow state. So it could be that they use some affirmation phrases just to reduce the pressure. It could be that you hit the pressure full on, and we say to a lot of our athletes, this is pressure, this is you. Do you have the mental fortitude to knock that pressure out of the ground? And how we do that, it's a long process, and it's trial and error for a lot of athletes. But it's about being reflective as well. So when we deal with pressure and strategies that persist under pressure, we always talk about persistence under pressure, because you don't want to do it on a Monday but not on a Tuesday. So what we try and grow with our athletes is two things. One, they put their whole self in to whatever they're doing. So the way to eliminate pressure is to put your whole self into the situation. And that's not to say that what they're doing is the most important thing in the world ever. But at the time that you're doing it, you must make it your number one priority. Because when you put your whole self into something, then the pressure that surrounds you, it doesn't seem as extreme. But if you're only going at it 50%, or your mind's somewhere else, or you're half thinking about something else, your whole self's not in it, then the pressure can eat you up. But with your whole self in, the pressure can reduce. And the second thing is we say, you've got to have a competitive fire within you. It burns within you. So that no matter how pressurized the situation feels, do you have the fortitude, the mental skills to actually recognize it and burn it with this competitive fire? Because pressure can kill players or kill athletes, but it can also be the fuel that spurs them on. So we always try and turn things to an advantage, and by having that competitive fire within, that never give up attitude, then you're halfway or 3/4 of the way to having an athlete who can persist under pressure. But I mean, just to wrap that question up, obviously it's deeply personal to the athletes, and we work with them at the level that they're ready and willing to work at, but always with the emphasis to have something that persists. So deconstruct it, work out some strategies that work or don't work, trial and error, reflect on it, but always maintain those two principles: competitive fire within and putting your whole self into the situation. If you do those two things, you'd be surprised to find out how little the pressure seems to affect you negatively.
Now, I imagine these sort of concepts, you could apply that to almost anything in life that, quote unquote, can bring pressure, right? So, I mean, people experience this sort of pressure every day. In the workplace, they might have, they might have a presentation, or, even just us doing this interview, there's a certain element of pressure, and we're in our own way in a flow state having a conversation about these sort of things. And I mean, are these concepts applicable to everyday life, to the everyday person who might not be trying to be, the best in the field, but still wants to increase their performance and access flow state in their own life?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the human brain is the human brain, whether it's in a sports context, whether it's in business, whether it's in the field of medicine or wherever it may be. That's you. That's what makes you you. So it's not like an athlete will be stressed at home with his children, but he won't be stressed on the field. It's an all-consuming concept. So what we always say to people who want to find that flow state in their everyday life, again, we go back to saying be above the line. And we ask some tough questions sometimes. You know, I met with a group of footballers who all were desperate to be professionals, or claim that they're desperate to be professionals. And I said to them, you're trying to make it in one of the hardest things in the world to be a professional athlete. So it's very, very hard to make it as a footballer. How many of you made your bed this morning? And maybe 2 or 3 out of the 16 didn't make their bed. So the question to bounce back is, you know, if you're not willing to make your bed every morning, how can you make it in the world of professional sport? So for the everyday person who wants to be above the line and experience flow, do the little things well. You know, if you can get up every day, as soon as your feet hit the floor, and put yourself above the line, and put yourself in a position where you know you're going to start your day well, you know, you'd be surprised how often you get into those flow opportunities. So I think it's more than applicable for someone who wants to just be every day at their best. You know, be the best you can be. Finding that flow for me comes from building routines and having a capacity to be open-minded, to live above the line and do the little things well every day. That puts you in a position to experience those flow. You'd be surprised how often, you know, you've got a big presentation at work. Do the little things right leading up to that presentation. Get up, make your bed, have the correct breakfast. Your nutrition's important. Leave on time. You will be surprised how calm you feel when you get into that presentation, as an example. You know, too many of the people think, you know, I've got this big presentation coming up over here. I'm going to neglect this, and this, and I'm going to rush to it.
So it's almost like having your baseline covered. So your normal aspects of day-to-day life are sort of covered on that autopilot way, like you talk about, by having your habits set in place. And then when it comes time to perform, all of everything leading up to it seems to, from what you're describing, seems like everything leading up to that moment of performance is autopilot habit. You've done it a million times before. You're comfortable. And the only difference is that one extra step that you're taking on the day.
Yeah. And we call that, you know, we work with a lot of people and we call that setting your square. You know, what are the non-negotiables, the real objective principles that no matter what you're doing 24/7, you will not deviate from. So, you know, if you want to be someone who in their presentation they want to control their emotions and they don't want to kind of get too emotional about something, then that's got to be something that you do every day. That's part of your square. That's part of your what frames you as a person. So, and it goes back to those real old principles. You know, practice what you preach. Control your emotions day in, day out, and don't just assume that, you know, this big thing that's hanging around in the back of your head, the job interview, the presentation, that will take care of itself if you live above the line with those principles that give you an objective framework. And it's often hard because the big thing that you're building up towards, that's the thing you want to nail and that's the thing you want to get right, and rightly so. But put yourself in a position to be the best that you can be at that particular thing. How do you do that? By taking care of the little things and getting the little things right. You know, it's not about perfection and everything. Perfection is very much a subjective thing. You know, what's perfect to you might not be perfect to me, but try and achieve some excellence. You know, excellence is almost a kind of a gold standard that everyone can agree. You know, if you go and execute a cartwheel or a handstand, I will tell you that it's excellent. And you will tell me, but is it perfect? Well, no, I might slightly move my hand that way or left or right. That's up for debate. But excellence is almost unilaterally and universally agreed. So aim for excellence in all of the little things, and then the flow will happen when you need it. But yeah, it's about routine building, I would say.
So the flow state itself, often is talked about as an elusive state, where it's almost like it talk in a sort of magical, ethereal way, as if only a few elite people seem to access it. But I feel like, through this conversation and other conversations I've had, that it's not something as rare as people might think. In fact, we probably all enter it, even on a daily basis. What, in your experience, how often do you actually see people entering the flow state?
First, let's debunk this myth that flow is reserved for the elite few.
Yeah.
That is absolutely absurd to think that you can't find a flow state in what you're doing. It is absolutely absurd. I work in classrooms, day in, day out. I see my students enter states of flow every day. They're immersed in what they're doing. They're enjoying what they're doing, which is a key principle. You can't find flow in something you don't enjoy because you'll just butt up against it. Flow is not reserved for the elite. It's not this kind of take this magic tablet and here's some flow. It needs practice. It needs worked upon. But I see people entering what is deemed, a flow state multiple times a day, and sometimes you don't know you're in it. It takes someone from the outside to go, what you just did there in the last 15-20-minute learning episode was outstanding. So sometimes you don't know that you're in it, and it takes someone to kind of observe it for you. Other times it's the opposite. You know you're in it, and you don't need that external validation. Today I am the absolute best at what I'm doing. And it doesn't mean that you're the best at, the Olympic gold medalist, but at the level you're doing it, you're the best at it. And it's having that open-mindedness to be able to say, look, I'm going to be the best I can be. And if that's my state of flow, then that's what it is. So next time, you're hanging the washing out on the washing line or you're cooking dinner, aim to be the best that you can be at it. You'll be surprised how often you're just immersed in something, and then 15 minutes later you've created something, and if someone said, how did you do that, you might struggle to find an answer because you were so immersed in it. You had that single channel, those cues, nothing was distracting you. If you're hitting all of those things, you are in a state of flow. It's just not in front of 50,000 people and a million TV cameras, but that doesn't mean it's not flow. We'll debunk that myth, straight away.
Yeah.
And the short answer to your question, I suppose, how often do I see people in flow? Every day. Every minute of every day, I could probably pick someone who's immersed in what they're doing, loving it, reflecting on it, and really enjoying it. So it's not for those lucky few.
Does that element of self-awareness break the flow state? Because I see it as a state of mind where you're, I guess you could call it, quote unquote, in the moment as such, and you're not thinking really from your higher centers. It's not about the mental chatter, it's more about the just doing and being side of things. So you mentioned, knowing that you're in flow. Is that something that's possible? Because I don't know, just conceptualizing it for me, if I know that I'm in flow, or I create an element of self-awareness around flow, then potentially that would snap me out of it. It's like, I'm so in the zone here, but then suddenly you're out of the zone because you think about it. Is that something that you've recognized?
I think, you can be so immersed in something, and it may not be until you're coming out of it that you're reflecting on it that you're in flow. But a lot of athletes report on the fact that they're almost viewing things in two dimensions. They've got we call it the ant and the helicopter approach. So the ant is right in at the level of detail, and they can see and feel things that know they're in flow. But then the top athletes, when they're in this flow state, they can kind of have also what we call the helicopter approach, where they can almost see themselves doing something, and they can form that detachment, and it's almost like they're looking down on themselves. And they can almost kind of, after the event, they can report on, at one level, my subconscious mind was just really kind of taking over an autopilot. But whilst that was going on, the conscious part of my brain, that was sort of really wasn't interfering, but I really knew what I was doing was correct. So yeah, it's getting to those higher levels of thinking and being able to flip out from, can I zoom out now and get this helicopter approach and kind of view what I'm doing from the top, whilst also staying in at that real depth, that detail level where that ant that's scurrying around can see things that no one else can see. So that's how we kind of split screen that flow experience, because what we like to do with our athletes is we like them to be able to self-reflect and report on what it felt like. So sometimes it's hard to reflect on something if you can't really, I don't know, I was just in the moment.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great that you were. But in terms of moving forward, it would be good to really get that extra depth and detail to know, well, my body language was like this, I felt like this, my breathing was really shallow or it was really deep, or, my heart rate felt really low. So you need to get those deep questions answered, because the next time that you want to put yourself in that position, the devil's in the detail, and you need as much help as you can, because it's, like I said, it's not easy being the best in the world, whether that's the best parent, the best athlete, the best chef, the best whatever. It's never easy. So give yourself an arsenal and a toolbox of weaponry that you can draw upon, because you want to be in flow more than me, and I want to be in flow more than you, because we're going to go head to head on the tennis court or whatever it may be. So can you get that that split screen approach? And if you do, it'll give yourself a lot more detail to work with.
Yeah. So talking about that toolbox or arsenal that you're talking about, let's give, I guess, the audience some practical advice. What sort of things can other people do to experience flow more frequently in their lives? So what sort of practical approaches? I understand that you usually spend hours and hours and even weeks with athletes, and it would be hard to sum up in a couple of sentences for someone just to pick it up. But I'm sure there are a few things that we could all do just to get a bit more flow in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, for me, control some of the physiological aspects of your body. Can you control your breathing? If you can just take a moment, focus on your breathing, in through your nose, out through your mouth, that really just settles a lot of things down in your brain, in your body. So if you can just invest in taking, a minute, 10 seconds or whatever it may be, just to control your breathing, and just think, just as you're breathing, just in through the nose, out through the mouth. Say the words to yourself or say them in your head. You'll be surprised to find how much more clarity you can see things with. So the first real easy thing is control your breathing and really focus on that. Because when you control your breathing, then you can control your thoughts a little bit better.
So are we talking in the moment of pressure now, or are we talking as a daily routine? When would they apply this?
Both. Yeah, both. I mean, build it into your daily routine, superb. But in that moment of pressure, in that real, that real apex of pressure, if the situation allows you just to take just a step back, if the moment can spare you that, just to take a few deep breaths, control your breathing, tell your brain that's what you're doing as well. Look, hang on, I'm controlling my breathing. It could be next time you're in that big argument with your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. If you can take that step back, concentrate on your breathing. Concentrating on your breathing allows you to control your thoughts. So if you control your breathing, you can control your thoughts a little bit better. And it's normally your thoughts that are inhibiting or maximizing the pressure. If you can control your thoughts and get a real clarity of thought, then you can select what is actually important or not. If you can't control your breathing and you can't control your thoughts, no matter whatever gets thrown at you, it builds the pressure, it adds it up, it adds it up, it adds it up until the pressure cooker explodes. But by controlling your breathing and controlling your thoughts, as these different things are hitting you from different angles, you can actually absorb them and go, well, actually, that's not adding to my pressure. That's just an extra, that's quite a trivial thing, that doesn't matter to me. So you can deflect a lot of things away. But when you don't control your breathing, you don't control your thoughts, everything just seems to build and build and build and build. So the two practical things, like I would say to any top athlete or any person who just wants to explore this a little bit further, control your breathing. It allows you to control your thoughts and get some clarity of mind.
Mm.
From there, then you can just detach yourself a little bit from the situation, because you've got to work out whether it's, when we're talking about pressure, is it situational pressure or is it pressure coming from within? If you're keeping pressure on yourself, then controlling your breathing will actually help you deflect that. If it's situational pressure, then controlling your thoughts will help you control the situation. So for the everyday person or in their everyday life, if I had to give them two bits of information, it would be detach yourself from the situation when you can, control as many things that you can control, and primarily make that your breathing and your thoughts that are going on in your head. If you can't control your thoughts, your brain can just run away with you, and before you know it, you're on a downward spiral, and then your heart's beating out your chest, and your mouth's gone dry, and then it seems like there's no way back. But it all comes from your breathing and your thoughts. So they're my two kind of takeaways. If you didn't listen to anything else so far, I would say they're the two things you could take away.
Yeah, so bringing that element of control back to a situation that potentially, you feel out of your depth in.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we've been talking for about half an hour now and had a great exploration of concepts of flow and peak performance. Just to wrap things up, I've just got one more question. In your opinion, what's the major difference between the great and the best? So this could be in terms of athletics, where you've had a wealth of experience, or in any field, like even musicians or performers. There are a lot of really, really skilled and talented people out there doing amazing things every day that, we don't see because they're not in front of a huge live audience. And, you could argue that there are football players, there are musicians as good, if not better, than what we see in the public eye as the best all the time. So what's the difference between the great and the best, in your opinion?
In a one-word answer, I think it's mindset. What I believe that means is the best, the absolute best, have an inner core of unshakable self-belief. And they will never, ever give up, no matter how the odds are stacked against them, no matter how far the chips are down. The absolute best, because I totally agree, you might be as skilled as me at something, or you might be as skilled as another athlete who you really admire, but he's got a gold medal and we haven't. They have an absolute unshakable self-belief. And we say that to our athletes, you can't shake the unshakable and you can't break the unbreakable. And it's that inner core of self-belief and never say die attitude. I've been fortunate enough to watch the best tennis players in the world, the best athletes, some of the best footballers that you see around the world. Somehow, somewhere, they will find a way. Whether that means coming from 2 sets down to win, whatever it may be, they will find a way. And if they don't find a way on that particular day, it sure as hell won't be for a lack of trying, it won't be for a lack of effort, it won't be for a lack of great determination. They might walk off the court and go, he was better than me today.
Yeah.
But I've still got that inner core, that unshakable self-belief. That, for me, is what makes the best, and their willingness to be the hardest working people and working on multiple things. Reinforcing their strengths, working on their weaknesses, covering all the bases, leaving no stone unturned. Probably that might mean you've got to be a little bit selfish at times. But in a nutshell, you don't let anyone get in your way of the goal that you want to achieve. And that's what makes the best. And it's like, going back to what we said about flow, that isn't reserved for the elite few either. Sometimes the lesser talented people with the more self-belief, they're the ones that make it. And the young protege who at 5-year-old looked like he had the world at his feet and he couldn't do any wrong. Well, if he never failed at something, you can bet your boots that when failure does come, he hasn't practiced how to deal with it. He hasn't practiced how to come back from it. He hasn't practiced his attitude, his mindset. He hasn't been out of his comfort zone enough times. And therefore probably doesn't have that inner desire, that that flame that burns regardless, to say, look, no matter what, I'm going to come back from this. And like I say, we say, you can't shake the unshakable, you can't break the unbreakable. So that inner core of self-belief, no matter what falls away, that will remain. And that's your pillar that everything's got to be built on. And those real strong foundations, they'll be with you till the day that you die. And that's what makes the best the best. In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, beautiful. Andrew, I'm going to be greedy and just ask you one more thing just related to that question. That mindset that you talk about, being about being the best versus being great, is that something you're born with, or is it something that you can learn?
Yeah, I don't think you're born. I don't think you're born with it at all. I think willingness to put yourself out of your comfort zone, and not being afraid of failure, they build layers and layers and layers of self-belief. So you could be the most talented golfer, but if you never put yourself in the position to test your talent against the best, and let's be fair, recognize that you may lose this one, but you're going to come back from it, then those people learn skills that the golfer who was the best, who will only play the people that he knows he can beat, eventually, you're going to come to a junction where you're going to go one way and they're going to go the other. So it's all about who's got that real need to achieve, who really has that natch, that need to achieve, and will stop at nothing to be the best they can be, and who just has that need to avoid failure. So, I'm pretty good at this, so I'll just avoid going to that next level, and I'll stay as the best rep player or the best regional player. And I always carry that badge with me, those medals, but I didn't step up. Well, why did I not step up? Did I have a need to achieve, or was I just happy being at my comfort zone? So it may appear that some people are born with more self-belief and that unbreakable determination. I would imagine if you could speak to those people one by one, you'd find that they'd had many pitfalls, they'd lost a lot, they had to bounce back from failure a lot.
And you only really see the success.
Yeah, and when you're in front of the TV camera, it looks like everyone is as good as each other, and they probably are. But everyone's got their own self-belief stories, and every autobiography you read or whatever, what comes through all the time is how they bounce back from failure. Because it's inevitable. You can't have success without failure. You can't have winning without losing. But you can have a good reaction to all of those things. And I believe, and I wouldn't be sat here now, and I wouldn't be running things the way I do if I believed that self-belief and success and determination was something you were born with. All I'd be doing was going around having this talent ID program where I was trying to find these lucky people who were born with a gift that you didn't have. So I would refute anyone who says, he's born with more self-belief than him. It's not like blue eyes or blonde hair or long legs or short legs or anything like that. That's genetic. There must be something that makes some people step up, and it's got to be their reaction to the situations that they voluntarily and involuntarily put themselves in. From the worst of things that happen to you, it could be injuries, it could be real negativity. If you can find, the silver lining in that, if you can find those little 1 or 2% things that you're going to use to help you grow, and remember them and reflect upon them, then you've probably cracked it, and you're building that inner pillar, that unbreakable core of self-belief. So I could have answered that question pretty simply with a no, and maybe I should have, but they're my answers to that. And I think anyone who's not willing to go on that journey, you'll get good. You'll get good to a certain point, but you probably won't be the best you can be, and you probably won't be in flow state as much as the man who's had to struggle and fight and really have that burning desire.
Absolutely. Pushing that boundary and pushing that comfort zone almost as a habit.
Yeah. And making it part of your everyday existence, Are you willing to live 20%, 30% of your week out of your comfort zone? Because if you're not, but someone else is, you might be more talented than him now, But next month, next year, next decade, he's going to catch you up and he's going to leave you with the dust, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's been an absolutely fascinating 40-minute conversation with you, and it's been really great to explore what you do in your work and how you apply concepts of peak performance to achieve more flow. So I've got to thank you for sharing your wealth of experience and knowledge and giving everyone a few tips on how to, just really improve their own lives and take things to the next level, whatever that might be for themselves. So thanks, Andrew, for joining us today.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, and really enjoyed it. And I'm sure the Flow Centre can really help people achieve at the level that they want to. And it's been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to doing it again sometime, definitely.
Beautiful. Sounds fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much.